Whether your beer is in a bottle, can, or glass, kick back and relax. It's better on draft.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Michigan Series, episode number 6. My name is Ken. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. It is Friday, March 5th. We are getting into it today, and we've got a very special guest. We've hosted shows literally just down the road from where his tap room used to be, which we'll be talking about that here in a little bit. But we've got Ken Schramm on the line today. Ken, how you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
We usually go around and we all get an introduction and ask the first question. And my first question is, for me, mead is very, very sweet. I'm not really one that jumps in. So is it bad courtesy or bad form to cut mead with water or some type of other drink to kind of mellow it out a little bit?
We do all kinds of things with mead. I cut mead with Scotch whiskey. I take our nutmeg and mix it 1-to-1 with a lowland Scotch like an Auchentoshan. And it's quite delicious. So yeah, we do just about everything. You can cut mead with soda water. You can cut mead with Vernors. You can cut mead with just about anything you're interested in. You can serve it over ice. We're not pretentious. We don't care what you do with the mead. If you pay for the bottle, it's yours. Enjoy it however you would like, please.
All right. I mean, that's truly a very fair answer. So I'm drinking the Blackagnes. Why don't you tell me a little bit about this beer? I got it on draft actually from Cultivate earlier today.
Terrific. Cultivate's been a spectacular customer and one of the few people that's had mead on through the entire duration of the coronavirus crisis. Blackagnes is a mead that was conceptualized after we'd opened. It was it was in fact I think the first mead that was added to our lineup from our basic lineup of the statement raspberry, blackberry, and ginger. And Blackagnes was intended to be a really richly fruited mead and to be done with a spectacular amount of acidity. Blackcurrants are the most acidic fruit that I know of. The blackcurrants can be 10% acidity as measured tartar and compared to tartaric. So like a red wine. Here's a red wine, right? I got a red wine in my glass right now. It's about 0.7% acidity. Blackcurrants can be 10% acidity. So it's massively tart. If you eat blackcurrants just on their own, you can barely stand to eat them without putting a mouthful of sugar in there. So that's what we did. We balanced the acidity with a tremendous amount of honey. It's probably got more sweetness to it than any mead that we sell. But by the same token, it's got more acidity. So that's why it's got kind of a flavor balance going. It is done with a lot of, I'm not going to give you the exact, I won't call it proprietary, but we do a lot of fruit. A big batch of our Blackagnes will take 2 tons of fruit in our large fermenter. So it's really, really thick and rich.
Awesome. So I'm going to bring in one of my co-hosts. Dan, how you doing today?
Hey, doing pretty good.
What are you drinking?
Got the trusty vodka soda as usual right now.
All right. And obviously, what's the weather?
Oh, it's 83 and sunny right now.
83 and sunny.
Sorry.
Enjoy Phoenix. Dan, what's question you got for Ken over here?
So as you just heard, I'm in Phoenix. So that's kind of where my question is going to go. You guys recently made it out here, which is lovely to have you guys out here. Tell me a little bit about how that happened and how have sales been, especially walking into the backyard of Superstition. Curious as how it's gone so far for you.
Well, we just got there. We have only been in Arizona now for a couple of months, and so it's been tough to say exactly what's been happening. And we simultaneously got into the states of Washington and California. And to be honest with you, I've been spending more time paying attention to what's going on in California because it's such a huge market.
Makes sense.
The California market for us has been great. Arizona has sold extremely well. We went through pretty much everything that we had delivered to them quickly, so there's not a whole lot of stock sitting on the distributor shelf. But I haven't been able to peer into what sell-through looks like. But we're very happy.
Awesome.
All right, and next up on the host list we have Nick. How you doing, Nick?
I did not forget to learn how to mute my unbutton. I just couldn't get to it timely. So let me just say that first. Doing good. The two-time champion of King of the Hill is back.
Oh,
to defend his title.
He's already trash talking. For those of you who don't know, you got to watch us on IGTV or watch us live Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Better on draft.tv.
If I win a third week in a row, I got a surprise for you guys.
Oh boy!
Like
so I'm gonna throw the game now.
What are you drinking, Nick?
Well, we double fist here in this house on Friday night. So I got the Modern Times Black House Stout. So starting with that. And my beer of the month, even though I only had one last month, and I wish I can get more, but I don't live in Louisiana, the Rising Hope from Parrish Brewing. Honestly, one of the best beers I've had in a very, very, very long time. So kudos to them for putting out something that's tasty and really, really good. And hopefully we'll be able to get more one of these days soon. So.
Well, what question do you have for Ken over here?
So I'll just out and say it. I'm not a big mead person. When someone approaches you and they start asking about mead and they want to get into it, what would be a good gateway mead to kind of get someone into maybe drinking it more often? Because when you say mead, no one really seems to know. The casual beer drinker might not know what a mead is. How do you get someone in, and what would you recommend to get them into the world of mead?
Sure. Well, the first thing I'll say about mead is that mead has as much breadth as beer does. So it's not easy to say, okay, well, you should start here and have a reasonable expectation of what mead is going to be like, any more than if you started, for example, with a British mild, you would have a really good idea of what beer is going to be like. Because I mean, you got the brewery on this end, you've got Pilsner Urquell over here, you've got and then you've got American lagers and then you got American pale ales. I mean, the range is whopping, right? And
Sure.
The same thing is true with mead. Right. So if you're going to start with something that's really light and refreshing and quick and easy, a Zombie Killer from B Nectar is a great place to start. I mean, it's a crisp, refreshing, delicious mead. And it's going to be something that you can have two of if you choose to, and you're not going to really have two Blackagneses in a night. If you do, you're both in a diabetic coma and you're blasted. So I would start with something like that. But on the other hand, if you are interested in a rich, full-bodied mead, a great place to start is the mead that we may call the Statement, which is it's a Bellatone cherry mead. And what we're trying to do with mead is not necessarily the same thing that everyone's trying to do with mead, but a lot of our meads are going to be constructed such that what you can get out of them is a really crystal clear understanding of what this fruit will be like, well fermented, and what the honey that's underlying it is going to be like, well fermented. So a Statement is made with orange blossom honey, and it's made with Bellatone cherries. Bellatone cherry is a cherry that most people aren't really familiar with, if they haven't really been into Side Project and a bunch of other people are working with Bellatones now. We like to say that I'd like to think that we had a lot to say about that because we came out of Michigan and we were the ones, we were one of the first people that said, hey, this is a spectacular cherry, and you really need to figure this out. You really need to, I say figure it out. You really need to gain a sort of a personal relationship with this variety of cherries because it's delicious. It's got a slightly lower acidity than the Montmorency, but it's got more a fleshier, fruitier flavor. It's dense, it's dark, it's rich. And that's the kind of thing we want people to understand. And so what Schramms is trying to do is to deliver that, and without being too philosophical about it, we're taking our lessons from the wine community where they've been doing a great job. For example, taking Riesling grapes or Pinot Noir grapes, one grape, and turning it into something that is compelling and spectacular to taste. So that's what we're trying to do with the statement, is to say this is what a really well fermented, ripe, delicious Bellatone is going to be like. And part of the vernacular in the wine world is typicity, meaning can you recognize what this sort of thing is? And that's what that is. We're trying to get you the typicity of Bellatones. And there, that goes on a heck of a lot in beer. I mean, in beer, a really good typistic pale ale that's made with Maris Otter should reek of Maris Otter, right? I mean, it should, and if you like, especially if it's, they were a few years ago, they were called smash beers, the single malt, single hop beers, right? Well, if you're doing Maris Otter and Centennial, you should be able to really recognize exactly what well-presented Maris Otter and Centennial are coming across as in that smash beer. Well, and that's what. So look at Schramm's the statement as the same thing with orange blossom honey and Bellatone cherries.
Now, our Bellatone cherries? Now, cherries aren't something that I gravitate towards. Is that like a local thing in Michigan, or can you find that? Is that pretty common? Kind of talk about that a little bit, because that's when you say Bellatone cherries, that's actually the first time I've actually heard.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you think apples for a second. You have your Granny Smith, your Washington apples, your Red Delicious, those. I figure cherry is a cherry, but I'm a simpleton when it comes to it. So is that local to Michigan, or is that kind of like spread out all over the place?
Well, Bellatone came out of Europe. It was actually originally a European cherry. It's from Hungary. And then this woman named Amy Iazoni from the Michigan State Cherry Research Station in I think they're in Fredericksburg, up on I-96 between Lansing and Grand Rapids. Right. Well, she was working on figuring out what, we're good at growing Montmorencies, which is the cherry that everyone's familiar with. And she thought, okay, well, there's got to be more to this, right? I mean, there's more to grapes than just Cabernet Sauvignon or Niagara, Concord. So what's up with cherries? And she brought in this variety from Hungary and worked on it for a while, bred it for a while to make sure that they could get the kinds of yields that you need to be commercially viable and do all the stuff that you need to release a cherry. And she did. And Michigan State University released that cherry, a couple of decades ago now. And now they're being grown in Traverse City. There aren't nearly as many of them as just the regular old pie cherry, but they're there, and that's where we get them from. We buy them from growers up there. Okay. We have some people that we're really familiar with. So yeah, it's kind of a Michigan thing. They're being grown in Washington State now as well, and they're great because it's just a different flavor. It's a really and it's a richer, denser flavor than the Montmorency. I don't want to sound like the Montmorency is not a good cherry. It is, but there's more to cherries, and in fact, that's what I mean. Most people in the beer world are familiar with the Charbake. That's the cherry that's the really critical part of the best lambic creeks, and that's a cherry that we work with too. We're trying to get grown right here in Detroit. But yeah, I mean, there are lots of different varieties of cherry, and we're starting an orchard to help people to understand what the different cherries are and how they really create different flavors in mead. It's the same as you said, I'm an apple fan too, right? We grow the apples that we use in our apple reserve. We use 40 or 50 different varieties that I'm familiar with and that are really spectacular. The better the apples are, the better the honeys, the better the cider is going to be. And the same thing's true with all of these fruits. Fruit meads to me are really compelling because that acidity is what makes, I like to keep some sweetness in the mead because people are expecting that with the honey, but I also like to keep some sweetness in the mead because I also like to play with really high acid fruits.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, everyone's talking about what they got in their glass. I have an Orcus by Triboulet, which is a Southern Rhone wine, right?
Oh.
This is the first, this is left over from dinner. Now we had my wife made a spectacular pesto pasta, and
and I wasn't invited. What gives? I had to have wings from down the road.
You were invited. Did you check your email?
The only email that I check on a regular basis is my work email, and that's about 100 and something times a day. I barely check my personal anymore. It's like once or twice a day now. But,
yeah. Well,
so I guess I'm a little late. We're checking that out.
Yeah. So wine grapes are low acidity by comparison with the stuff that we play with.
Okay.
We play with stuff that's, this, like I said, this is probably 0.7% acidity. The statement is probably 2.5% acidity or 2%, right? So we leave the sweetness in the mead to counteract the acidity from the fruit. If we fermented them dry, like you ferment a Pilsner or like you ferment a dry white wine or a red wine, they would rip your face off. They would be so tart, they would be just literally unpleasant. And we can't do that to people.
Also on this show, we do have co-host Wendy. Wendy, how you doing?
I am fantastic this evening.
What are you drinking over there?
I am drinking a Redemption Road by Arclight Brewing. It's their Rocky Road inspired Imperial Sweet Stout. It's fantastic. I can't say enough. I am not two-fisting because it is a very large bottle. So we're going to stick with that one tonight.
What's your question for Ken?
My question for Ken, first I would be remiss if I did not tell you that one of my closest friends is probably your biggest fan. She actually had to go out and buy a wine fridge just to store her mead that she purchases from you because she loves it so much. So she wanted me to tell you hello.
Oh, thank her for me, please.
My question is, so Nick asked about new mead drinkers. What do you have going on right now that the experienced mead drinker would be really excited about?
Well, people that are really into Schramms know that we're hardcore fruit people, and we're starting an orchard right now. We have bought 6 acres of land in Rochester Hills. It used to be an architectural nursery called Shades of Green. It's on Avon Road between Rochester and John R. And we're planting it with the best varieties that we can possibly come up with. Our goal is to do the same thing for the fruit that we're growing for mead, that the people who make the best malt and the people who grow the best grapes are doing. I mean, the people who grow barley to make malt out of it know all of the things that they need to know in terms of irrigation and fertilization levels and sun exposures and where you're supposed to put stuff and how soon in the year you're supposed to till and how much you're supposed to do. They know all of the agricultural processes that, that's why Maris Otter is Maris Otter, right? That's why the Moravian malt that's used to make the greatest Pilsners in the world is Moravian malt, because those people have been doing this for hundreds of years, and they really, really have these agricultural practices down. And the same thing is true with grapes. When they're growing grapes to make great wine, there are dozens of parameters that can be controlled for in terms of what variety is planted where and what exposure, and do you run the rows east to west, or do you run them north and south, and how do you manage the canopy, and how do you manage there's just I mean, literally, I counted the other day, I counted 25 different parameters after you've put the grapes in the ground that you can control for to try and maximize the quality of the product. And that's why these people are able to grow these grapes that they turn into wine that then sells for thousands of dollars a bottle. Right now, I'm not saying we're going to grow meads that are going to cost thousands of dollars a bottle, don't get me wrong. But what we're going to try and do is to figure out what those things that we can control for to maximize quality will actually be. And it comes down to irrigation and whether or not you fertilize and what varieties you plant where, how much sun they get, all kinds of stuff that covers the same set of ground, the same pieces of ground, to figure out how can I get the best possible thing in someone's glass when we're done. And no one's done that yet, as far as I know. No one's doing that with cherries. No one's doing that with some people are probably doing it with apples that are ending up in cider. That's the one area where there's probably some attention being paid to this. But the rest of it, all of the raspberries and cherries and blackberries and all these other fruits that are being grown to make mead are not being maximized for quality. So, I mean, the great thing about mead is, and the great thing about making products like this is you work in 1 year cycles, but, we're in it for the long haul. My daughter is my CEO, and my son-in-law is the head of sales. My other daughter's out there working as a supervisor, the property supervisor for the orchard. So we're in this for generations, and that's what it takes to get to how good something can be. If if you only have a 1 year cycle to figure out what's the next thing we can do to make it better, and then a year later you can figure out the next thing, and a year later you can figure out the next thing. Well, it's pretty obvious that eventually you're going to end up in 30 or 40 years before you get to where you want to be. But we have people in the family, and that's the goal. The goal is to get both people in my own family, and then a staff of people who are into this. And we have people that are they're in their 20s and 30s that are working for us right now, that I expect are going to be working for us in their 50s and 60s, trying to do the same thing. And that's, to me, that's exciting, because the beer people and the wine people have had their 100 or 200 or 500 years to figure these things out. And they've got, there's some just fantastic beers out there in the world. And there's some fantastic wines out there in the world. And we want to do the same thing for mead that those people are doing. So, if you're looking for the thing that you can tell your friend who's in mead, who's enjoying our mead, and thinks it's pretty good, we think it's pretty good too, but we don't think it's as good as it can be. And that's our goal. We are, if she's going to get on for the ride, she's going to be into this for the long haul. 20 years from now, Schramm's mead ought to be way better than it is right now. And that, to me, is kind of exciting.
That's actually amazing.
I have follow-up questions, but I have one more host I need to bring in, which is going to be Robert. How you doing, and what are you drinking?
Doing all right, man. I am drinking a Dragon's Milk, the Reserve peanut butter and cocoa nibs that I found on the shelf today. And I'm also sipping in here a Schramm's Bramble Plus.
Ooh, thank you.
It is very, very smooth. But I kind of wanted to go back. Let's go back a bit. So obviously you got into mead, starting off with Charlie Papazian's, The Joy of Home Brewing, which led you into the mead making. You authored your own book, The Complete Meadmaker, which that got published back in 2003. But obviously it wasn't until 2013 that you brought the Schramm's mead to retail. Talk to us about what made you go, and actually let me back one other thing up in there, is that back in 1992, you co-founded the Mazer Cup Mead competition as well. So with all of those accomplishments and in mead and mead making, talk to us about what made you go from doing everything as being like the home mead maker and writing this book and coming up with this competition to deciding, I'm going to go into a business and start putting this product out to the masses.
Well, I mean, if you're okay with listening, it's I'll take this could be a long answer, but it's kind of fun. I mean, it's kind of fun, right? 1988 is when I actually 1987, Christmas of 1987 is when I got the copy of the complete home brewer, and you know, it was in April of that year when I tasted my first compelling homebrew and decided I was really going to get into this, right? And as soon as I did, I was just completely into it. But and at the time, I was working in television production. I was a TV guy. I had been working for a cable company in Taylor. It was McLean Hunter at that point. But while I was working for McLean Hunter, this guy Mark Stacy, who's from Detroit and who is one of the best sports camera people in the country right now, he and I were working as freelance camera people doing we started off doing small time NCAA stuff, and then Mark got a job working the Big Ten contract, and so he said, Ken, come on, let's get in on the Big Ten games. So I started working Big Ten sports, and I stayed with that, and that's what I was doing when I made my first beer. And then I got a job at a place called Mobile Images, which was an industrial production company in Southfield. And I'm making beer and loving it and getting really into it. I got introduced to Bill Pfeiffer that year. And then while I was working at Mobile Images, the Palace called and said, hey, Ken, because I was running by this time now I'm starting to run camera for Pistons games. And Harry Hutt, I don't know if you guys remember how many of you remember the whole Bad Boys era? Anybody here?
Yeah, I've seen enough documentaries.
Yeah. Well, I was a part of the Bad Boys era, and I was running game camera for most of those games that you guys were watching, right? Nice. And Harry Hutt, the big guy in the truck, George Blaha used to always say, "Oh, I want to thank the big guy in the truck, Harry Hutt." Well, he was the director, was talking in my ear. Well, I'm running camera for him, right? and Harry liked my work, and he they called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to be the production supervisor at the Palace?" And I said, "Well, yes, I certainly do." That sounds like a great job. And so I worked for the Pistons. I ran camera for them during the first championship year, and I was a production supervisor for the second championship when they won back-to-back. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. So people ask me, why don't you just jump in? Well, I had this other thing going, and it was pretty cool. I had this other deal going, and it's really hard to leave. Even if people are calling you up saying, "Hey, well, you want to come be a brewer for me or be a mead maker for me?" Well, no, man, I'm the production supervisor for the Pistons. This is pretty cool. So I couldn't leave, and then eventually that's what I was doing in 1992 when I started the Mazer Cup. I was working for the Palace, and I did that until 1995, and then Wayne County Schools called and said, would you like to make educational training videos for us? And by then I had 2 little kids, and I said, okay, I'll come work for you. And I did, and had some success for them. I'm not going to go into all of that, but by that point now I got 2 little kids and a really secure job, and I was kind of a manager. And so at that point, it was really hard for me to leave that, because most of the jobs in beer and mead aren't, while they're great jobs, they don't pay as well as it takes to raise a family. And so I couldn't really leave my other gig. And I stayed there until I got my kids all the way through college. And then once I got my kids all the way through college, now it was time to start a meadery. And so I did. And at that point, I could take some of the money. I mean, I once I got my kids through college, I stopped putting money into my retirement. I stopped putting money into my kids' college education. I put it all into a bank account to start a meadery. So that's how it took until 2013 for there to be a Schramms mead.
Wow. So, and it's still pretty damn good mead, if I can say so on that.
Thank you.
Now, one other thing that I wanted to bring up, which you kind of touched it a little bit about the cost of mead. And, there's a lot of people that, especially in the beer and wine sector of consumerism, that they look at those prices of beer and they say, well, it's okay, it's a little high. Wine, it's all right. And then they'll go to the mead and they'll look at the mead on the shelf and will just instantly see the sticker shock that, oh my God, I could buy four 4 packs of some odd side stuff for what's costing for this skinny bottle.
Sure.
Why does this bottle cost so much?
Sure.
So I mean, I guess with when you mention the statement runs for about $40. Recently had the release of the rebuttal, which runs for about 125, and I think you've got Heart of Darkness that is coming out relatively soon, which I think that's a little bit higher than that.
Sure.
But I guess for the people that are out there, talk to us about what goes into that cost and what they're getting.
Well, the statement should be 22 for a 375. It's about $40 for a 750. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I was. Yeah, to clarify. Yeah. I think that's what the 750 that I saw.
And if you look at, most bottles of wine are going to be between 15 and $20 a bottle, and that's what you're going to pay to get a decent bottle of wine. And the problem that we have is twofold. Number one, it's expensive to put that much fruit in and then put that much honey in. Honey's about the most expensive fermentable that you can find. It's costs 2 to 3 times per pound, or per cost of fermentable what it costs to grow your own grapes and throw them in a fermenter. It's just really expensive. And now you throw in 5 or 6 pounds of fruit per gallon, and the actual cost of the beverage itself to get started is pretty high. And the other thing that's costing people money if they look at a bottle of Schramms is that we employ people full time. We're not. A lot of wineries right now, for example, just hire people on a contract basis during crush. Right? They come in, they work for 3 or 4 months while the grapes are coming in, and then they're out of work. And they don't get benefits while they're working there, and they don't get an annual income. Well, everybody that works for Schramms right now is full time and has benefits, and fully paid benefits. We're paying, we're paying for the health insurance for everybody, and we're paying all of it. And that gets that gets rolled into the cost of the bottle. That was a decision, that's a philosophical decision that we made. It said, we're not going to abuse our people. We're going to pay for their health insurance. I won't get into some. We're even paying for some people who aren't working right now. We're paying for their health insurance because that's, they're our family. They're the people that we love and trust, and we trust them with our mead, and we want them to be safe during this coronavirus crisis. And so they're not even working, but we're paying for their health insurance. So that's that's what we're doing, and so that money gets rolled into the cost of the bottle. We've made a philosophical decision to not sacrifice quality and not sacrifice our ethics as an employer, and we're just going to put the cost of that into the bottle. And we're not, nobody's getting rich at Schramm's Mead right now. No, trust me, nobody's getting rich at Schramm's Mead. I'm not going to run you around my house, but it's nothing special. We have reinvested everything that we've done to try and buy this orchard, for example. So instead of there being a profit margin, we took all of the money and put it into buying an orchard. We're trying to do everything to move the business forward for a long period of time and to create a future for a beverage that we want to try and make as well as we can possibly make it. And thank you to everyone who's buying these bottles, because they're the ones that are keeping this vision and this hope for this beverage moving forward. The thing that we're going to try and do, and I mean, this is what I've done my whole life. I mean, I've spent the last 25 years making presentations about how to make mead. there are a lot of people out there. I mean, it's immodest to say it, but there are a lot of people out there who know how to make mead because I helped them learn, right? And I did that at my own expense for a long, long time. I mean, I paid to go to all these conferences and never didn't get any money, and paid for my hotel room and paid for my mileage and my gas and blah 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 to go and teach the world how to make mead because I love this beverage a lot. And what, you know, right now, what we're asking people to do is to cover a chunk of that. And what they're getting, I mean, honestly, I drink a lot of wine. I drink a lot of great beer. I drink my dry Fontaines, and I drink my, you know, I drink those beers. They're great. What we're putting next to them in a glass is also pretty fine, right? We're not cutting any corners. We're not turning, you know, we're not messing around. And we also don't, you know, we spend a lot of time with mead in the tanks, that we don't filter it, right? And we don't push it. We let it take its time getting to when it's done, and then we release it. And so when people buy these products, what they're doing is helping to keep that going. And they're helping. I'm going out to UC Davis and teaching for them. I'm going to craft beverage expos and all these other places that I've taught people to make mead at. Every time people help us out, they're helping that out. They're helping keep all those educational and learning opportunities happening.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm going to pass that over to Ken. I think he's got a couple.
Yeah, I had a question, but I'm definitely changing it up a little bit just because of what you said. Because you released a book back in 2003, the Complete Meadmaker. You know, we had a little fun. We did go through and we saw. I'm sure you've probably looked at it. Your 1-star and 2-star reviews on Amazon.
Oh, sure.
Some of them are hysterical, including the fact of, you know, someone saying that you can't make mead, which I think is just laughable to all of us. And even a humble person like yourself can laugh at something that stupid. But that book's 18 years old now. And
Yeah.
I believe there was a note that said from 2003 to 2020, we went from 65 meaderies to nearly 500 open in the United States.
Right.
Is there a potential for a revision to the book or a follow-up, a sequel, that you're looking to do?
Well, I'm not really sure I'm going to write a different version of that book. I have outlines for 2 other books, and I have several chapters written for a second book on mead. But the other book that I want to write on mead is not probably going to be. Hang on, I got to ask my wife to hold it down.
You can just yell from here and tell her. You don't have to do anything.
I turned myself down.
It would have been so much funnier if it was live.
The thing that I am interested in doing is, if I'm going to write another book, I'd like to write a book that expands the knowledge base that's available about mead. And there isn't right now. There isn't a really good book on mead that talks about the fact that there are now 500 meaderies out there. What are those 500 meaderies? What are they doing? What are the stories of those people? What are the stories of the folks that are making that mead, and what are their philosophies in terms of what they're trying to bring to the public? So and the same thing is true in Europe and in Africa and in South America. There are terrific meaderies in Russia and Poland and Ethiopia and Kenya and in Brazil now, and in Chile and Argentina. And those people deserve some attention, and we also need to help to share what's going on in the whole philosophy and the science, the sort of mead making processes, because that's what makes beer is spectacularly interesting. Because if you want to know how to make a beer, if you want to know 12 ways to make beer great, ask 10 different brewers. So you can come up with all kinds of different attitudes about infusion mashing or decoction mashing or barrel use, or all kinds of stuff, temperature control. You know, all recipe formulation doesn't matter. You can pick any aspect of the brewing process, and there are people that are adding to it and creating great knowledge that needs to get shared. And the same thing's true with mead. We need to help the world understand who's doing what and why it's working.
You mentioned in some previous interviews that at one point when you were hanging out with Bill Pfeiffer, that you guys are doing up to 3 all-grain batches in a single day of
Yeah.
beer. Now, this is more of a fun personal question before I pass it off to another one of my co-hosts. But if you could, say the laws were changed and you don't need a winemaker's license and a brewer's license, you could sneak in a beer or two. What kind of style are you making us?
I would do a barrel aged stout version of every mead that. I mean, I would do a statement. I would do a Madeline. I would do a Heart of Darkness. I would do all of those beers, or all of those meads, rather, all of those fruits, and some of that honey as a barrel aged braggot stout fused together, and then probably barrel aged, and then and release those. I mean, yeah, I have a lot. I have a lot more imagination than I have time or money.
Would drink all of those. I'm just saying.
All right,
I
I'm
would
gonna.
I would drink all of those. Yeah.
You don't want to get high off of your own product. Rob,
That's true.
Rob, what do you got?
So, and I guess this was something I kind of ran into that was kind of interesting. So Dylan Sprouse, for some of you that probably know, former child star from The Sweet Life with Zach and Cody, he opened up his own meadery in Brooklyn called All Wise, and he agreed with the statement that honey wine is often recommended to novice home brewers because it's, quote, hard to fuck up. uh, I guess, do you agree that it is hard to fuck up? And is that really something that, as someone who is starting out as a home brewer, should start with mead before anything else?
All right, I'll give you my own take on that. Mead is easy to make badly.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of sugar in honey, and you can get sugar to ferment because it's sugar. But to make a mead really well, I mean, you can say the same thing for grape juice. I mean, you could throw yeast in Welch's Concord grape juice without even taking it out of the bottle and turn it into wine, right? But the question is, how good is it going to be? How well are you going to really execute? The two watchwords that we have at Schramms are quality and fidelity. We like to get the best ingredients we can possibly get, and we like to get out of the way, and that's the sign of a great brewer. That's the sign of a great winemaker. It's the sign of a great mead maker. Is, can you start with great ingredients and not screw them up? Because, I mean, anybody who's made beer knows that, yeah, you can buy all kinds of, you can buy Maris Otter and 2-week-old Chinook and turn it into absolute swill. And you have to know what you're doing. You have to be able to get out of the way. And it's my comment about that is that good mead making is like good umpiring, right? If you go to a sports event and at the end of the sports event you have nothing to say about how the officiating, that means they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
And you didn't notice it at all. And
Yeah.
that's how a good mead maker or a good brewer should be. They did a terrific job, and they just disappeared into the background. And here's the thing.
Well, hopefully one of these days I can actually get my own self out of the way and not keep screwing up my own batches of beer. I'm going to pass it over to Wendy, and she's got a question.
So my question is then, what has been one of the most difficult fruits that you've had to work with, or anything, any materials that you've had to work with to make a mead? Something that was like, why did I do that?
Well, have you had Schramm's papaya?
No.
There's a reason for that. Uh, you've never had a Schramm's kiwi. You've never had a Schramm's papaya. There's a bunch of stuff out there that we've tried. Schramm's mango. There's a bunch of stuff we've tried that we just can't. We we can get the quality ingredient, but the fidelity part didn't work, and so we stopped. So yeah, papaya, mango, kiwi. We've had a hard time with strawberries. I've had a tremendously difficult time with strawberries and with peaches and with blueberries. They are fruits that like to change when you ferment them. The same thing is true with plum. Right? Plum makes a terrific mead. Plum meads are great. You just wouldn't know that they were plum if somebody walked up and smacked you in the cheek with plum while you were drinking it. I mean, they're delicious, but they're just this generic, like dark brown or dark purple fruit flavor. Are they grape? Are they plum? Are they blackberry? They're delicious. So yeah, I mean there are a bunch of them, and we've tried to work around them, and we continue to pilot too. And that's one of the things that we do an awful lot of is to try different yeasts and try different production techniques with different fruits to see if we can make them come out. But I'd love to do a great kiwi mead. And my thought was always that, we're coming up right now. We're coming up to St. Patty's Day. Wouldn't it be terrific to have this beautiful green kiwi mead for St. Patrick's Day? Yeah, it would. And when we make one, you'll know.
Well, we have been talking for a lot of time. We're with Ken Schramm of Schramms Mead. Just real quick, don't forget to check out our sponsors. You can obviously find Schramm's over at Zatuna Liquor over on Rochester Hills, just south of M59 on Rochester Road, as well as North Center Brewing over in Northville, Michigan. You can't find Schramm's, but you can find great beer there, because their theory is kind of, you have the same mentality when you were talking about, as long as you're enjoying the drink it how you want to. North Center always goes, if you like it, it's a good beer. And I think both of those mottos are really, really important to kind of follow as a beer drinker and someone who is trying to get other people into drinking, and especially drinking mead too. For me, again, I'm still working my way through this 8 ounce can that I had. I've been cutting it with some B43 to add it, and it's definitely I'm still drinking it really slow, which is good because I definitely can throw back when I'm doing this show. But we're going to wind down a little bit. Everyone's going to have one final question before we get out of here. We're going to start with Daniel.
Oh boy, I'm getting ready for kind of face palm on this one. So if I'm playing Edward 40 hands and I have to use two bottles of your mead to play this, what should I drink as far as those go? What should I tape to my hands to play this game?
Ooh, the Rocket and ginger.
Okay.
So Rocket is a 14 ounce, looks like pineapple.
14% pineapple.
Yeah, 14%, not 14 ounce. And the ginger is also 14%. So Dan's gonna be.
It's gonna be a fun game.
Dan's gonna be dead.
Doubtful.
It wasn't that bad. Nicholas.
So I've heard through the grapevine, Ken, that you're a trout fisherman. You've been to a couple of different festivals in Michigan, Alpena and Kalkaska in particular. When you're out there fishing, what is your beer of choice?
My summer beer of choice is, I'm a Pilsner person. It depends. It depends on what's in great shape, but I'd say that Pilsner Urquell,
nice.
Victory Prima. I'm a fan of light, clean, Jaeger. You can't get it in Michigan, but I love Jaeger.
I've had Pilsner Urquell when I was in college for the first time. Very, very solid, very clean. I love it. Awesome. Very cool.
I'm a lager lover.
Nice.
Well, before I pass it off to Wendy, we do have a question from the chat. Fan of the show, Andrew, asks, is there a fruit or adjunct that you want to make a commercially viable product with? I'm guessing maybe commercially available and not viable. Um,
Yeah, we're working with a lot of things right now. I mean, I'm a fan. We're growing Gewürztraminer and Riesling. Um, there is when I was fly fishing. Let's tie two answers together. When I was fly fishing in Chile, my brother lived in Chile for a while, and I used to go down there and visit him. And while I was down there, I learned about this fruit called calafate. It is spectacular, and you know I'll try and wrap this up quickly because it's a long story. But the guy that we fished with down there, his name was Claudio Ramos. He was a wonderful guy. He introduced us to Calafate. Um, he was guiding a guy on an elk hunt, and the client shot him and killed him. And now his daughter is down there, and I'm trying to raise Calafate so that I can make a mead to pay for her college education. So that's Calafate.
all right, Calafate is the answer. Wendy.
So my question was going to be what is the favorite mead that you have made in the past?
I make two meads with the cherries from Belgium with the Chardonnay cherries. I make a thing called the Heart of Darkness, and it's it is the mead that I make right now that I can do what I talked about, where I can um, control every aspect of how the fruit's grown and harvested and handled. And the the Heart of Darkness is made with black currants, red raspberries, and Chardonnay cherries. And then we make one just with Chardonnay cherries that we call the Statement Reserve. It's like the Statement, but it's only made with Chardonnay cherries. And I would make that mead and drink that mead all day long if I could.
Robert.
All right. So obviously last year we unfortunately saw the closing of the tasting room. Um, but one of the statements that I saw from you was that uh, only the closure of that specific tasting room is permanent, which of course had me reading into that in some way or form like a Rubik's Cube. And I'm curious if there are plans underway to create a new tasting room now that we're kind of in, we'll call it the year of the vaccine.
Right. Um, well, the drag is going to be that, I mean, we invested a lot of money. We spent a pretty substantial chunk of change building that tasting room out to be what we wanted it to be. And that money is basically lost right now. So it's going to take us a while to get a nest egg put back together. But yeah, our goal is to have another tasting room. We don't have a definite, I mean, there is no specific location picked out right now. But our feeling is we want to get the fruit up and growing and working. So I would say once COVID is under control, we will begin looking at that really hard.
Awesome. All right.
We're gonna end with yep. We're gonna end with my question here, and this is gonna be a little bit more business wise, because I am a little curious. We've seen the advent of organizations like ABI and Miller Coors. They're making seltzers and sparkling vodka sodas and ciders. Um, Even I believe 2 years ago they tried to make ABI made a honey alcohol beverage, which I don't know if that's technically considered a mead, maybe technically but not actually. But do you see these bigger brands going into that style anytime soon as the mead industry growth is exploding the way it is?
Well, I mean, I can see them going into the lighter, quicker style stuff, the lower alcohol things. I don't really see them shooting at the style that we're making because it's so far from their production process. We're making stuff that takes sometimes a year to get from the recipe all the way through to the glass, and that's a production curve that most people just don't deal with, and they also don't want to. I mean, they're really not into the notion of we're just going to spend what it takes to make, to get the highest quality possible ingredients that we can, as much as they talk about uh, quality. That's not their game. And so I don't really see them coming after us. On the other hand, the one thing that I think could happen is that you might see a big honey company potentially get into the game.
Well, that actually makes a lot more sense than say Anheuser-Busch or Molson Coors. Ken, Schramm's Meadery, they can find your stuff in stores right now. Do you have anything online or delivery-wise that subsidizes what's going on with the pandemic and the closing of the tap room?
Oh
Or
yeah, absolutely. www.schrammsmead.com. You can buy the stuff online, and you can pick it up at our production facility, which is on Livernois in Ferndale. And if you have a big order in the Detroit area, I say a big order, I think it's a 1 case minimum, but we will do delivery to your home too.
well, if you got that new mead money and you want to buy a whole case just for yourself, obviously go check it out. We have a lot of upcoming shows over the next few weeks, including Weldworks, Wax Wings, Cigar City, Omni Pollo. Stay tuned to find the dates for all of those. Go check out Schramm's. Zatuna Liquor carries it, so go say hi to Jack. Tell him we say hi. If you say better on draft set, he might give you a discount, or he might look at you like, what does that mean? That's going to do it. This is the Michigan Series, episode number 8. No matter what you think of your beer or mead, we think it's better on draft. Have a good night.
Peace.